This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you on board and happy to thank our friends at Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park champions start here. Let me also remind you of a couple of the promos. Today there's a $100 online win-a-bet contest. Check out the website for more information there, capitalotb.com. Tomorrow here at the Clubhouse Racebook, double promotion day, the NYRA Pick 4 promotion and a match bet, both of those happening tomorrow, Sunday, Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. We'd love to see you down here. Today's program will be joined a little bit later by Brien, the Communications Director, National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame nominations were announced, about a week and a half or so ago for possible induction this August into the Hall of Fame. We'll talk a little bit about that and some of the other events at the Hall of Fame. Winter time, no better time to stop up on Union Avenue and take advantage of what's right in our backyard, the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. So again, we'll hit on some of the events. Towards the end of the show, I got a couple of replays from yesterday. You know, it's not often that a Friday provides a couple of interesting performances, but that was the game plan yesterday. Down at Tampa, there was a nice Pletcher 3-year-old. We'll take a look at that. And Stormy Liberal prepping potentially for Turf Sprint in Dubai. Went in the first. When do you see a Breeders' Cup winner wind up in the first race on a Friday, kicking off the double? But that happened yesterday with Stormy Liberal in the opener at Santa Anita, so we'll take a look at that one as well because it wound up to be kind of a ding-dong battle. But we will start things out, and I'm not sure I hear him in my ear or not, but we're going to start things out with Peter Thomas Pornatale, and they're still being told reaching out to Pete. Pete's got a new podcast that we'll talk a lot. There we go. Now I've got Pete in my ear. Peter Thomas Pornatale, new podcast we'll talk about. He was also out co-hosting with our buddy Steve Bick at the NHC out in Vegas when we were out there a couple of weeks ago, so I thought we would recap that a little bit. Pete, good morning.
Good morning to you. Yes, been very busy with the new In the Money Players podcast. We went independent a couple of months ago, and the early returns have been fantastic. Ratings better than ever, some great guests, and just having a lot of fun every Tuesday and Friday. You can find the show inthemoneypodcast.com or wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, etc.
And I was going to start out by letting you promo it a little bit, and that's a great way to get into it. You've given the website, In the Money Podcast. That's where people can find it. And again, checking out your Twitter feed and scrolling down a little bit and checking the podcast as well. I saw the most recent segment was number 18, so you're relatively new. Fill us in. If folks are going to check in, what will they find out when they listen to the podcast?
The Tuesday show, we typically recap races from the previous weekend. The Friday show will always be looking ahead to the big stakes races. We do a lot of listener questions. If you ask a question with the hashtag AskITM for In the Money, we get to those questions. And then we have a lot of guests, and we talk about everything from industry issues to where to eat and drink at various racetracks around the country to where J.K., Jonathan Kinchin, my co-host, developed his love of betting chalk. It's all fair game on the In the Money Players podcast.
Very good. And I'm looking up, I have a monitor off to the side that has the 4 tracks I will be doing this afternoon during OTB Live. And down in the corner of the screen, there's a graphic for Dawn at Oaklawn with Nancy Holthus. Your co-host Kinchin's is the guest today.
That's right. He's very excited. He enjoyed being at Oaklawn last week, and they enjoyed him so much that he's headed back out there. Very psyched to talk to Nancy, who of course is a real pro and part of those national broadcasts that he's been doing. But I'm excited for him. It's been great to see his rise from tournament player to media superstar at this point. I'm just dreading the day when he has more Twitter followers than me. Coming soon.
And, he's going to be down there. Have you ever been to Oaklawn? I've made one trip down there. Nice track. It's a fun track.
I love it.
Yeah.
I went for the first time 2 Arkansas Derbies ago. Loved it so much we went back last year. And then this year, I believe I'm going to be able to go again for the Arkansas Derby, hoping to piggyback on a trip to Rhodes College in Memphis, where Marshall Graham teaches a course about racetracks and economics. I'm hoping to snag a coveted guest lecturer spot there, eat a little barbecue, see a little music, and then head down to Hot Springs for the weekend. It's a great track. Folks should definitely put it on their list of ones to check out.
Yeah, Marshall, a really interesting guy. We were lucky enough to catch up with him out at the NHC. We've had him up at Saratoga a couple of times sit in with us. And for folks who aren't familiar, a prominent contest player. He made the final table a couple of weeks ago out in Vegas. Also an owner, 10 Strike Racing. You'll see that name at the various tracks around the country. But as you alluded to, also a professor of economics and son of a longtime Washington fixture, Phil Graham. But just, as I say, an interesting guy, certainly on the contest scene and beyond. Speaking of the contest scene, let's get into that a little bit because we were out there obviously with Capital OTB TV. You and Steve Bick were right across the ballroom from us with the radio setup, and you've been co-hosting this event with Bick for at least a couple of years now. And I told Steve a couple of years ago, great job, because to me, radio at a horse racing handicapping tournament, my first thought was, how interesting can that be? But it's great. I got pulled in, and that's part of what motivated us to go out with TV a couple of weeks ago. And last year, when you had Paul and Duke Matisse at the end of the contest, that was hilarious. It was informative. It was just great radio. We were doing live cut-ins during the weekend because we had live racing as well. So we were on intermittently. You guys turn it on in the morning, and you're live throughout the afternoon in the contest all 3 days. So I was able to kind of make it over and sit in with you a couple of times and had some fun, certainly. And given that you were on for more time than we were, you covered a wider range of players and whatnot. I looked at, we had, we talked to Marshall, we talked to Paul Matisse, we talked to a number of the folks who made it to the final table. We had some other local players that we talked to. So we certainly talked to some interesting people, but you had a wider range. Talk a little bit about maybe who stood out to you that you talked to over the weekend as characters or whatnot.
Oh my goodness! I'll be here all day if I get into everybody who deserves to be credited in that statement. A few things that leap out to me. Was really excited and genuinely touched to see some of the younger, at least we'll call them horse racing young players. These guys in their 30s, like the Capital Region's own Matt Vagvolgi, like the winner Scott Coles, who were up there, and when I talked to them about how they got into contests, they credited the work that I used to do over at DRF and am continuing to do on the new show. I just found that so gratifying, and it's so great to see young analytical minds drawn into racing and to become racing regulars through the contest scene. That makes me feel so good. You mentioned the Sunday analysis. We had some amazing stuff going on there this year. Probably my favorite segment was when Dave Gutfreund basically took over the microphone, and it was Gutfreund, Baychok, Paul and Duke Matisse, and Chick Matisse as well. And the line I dropped on them, I grabbed the microphone back from Gutfreund just to give one observation, which was that if the people at that table had decided to devote their brain power to another cause instead of figuring out who was going to win various races over the year, surely we'd have a man on Mars by now. And it was just great listening to those guys riff and their different observations about strategy and the tournament. It was so fun. Just a great cast of characters coming through. And you were a fantastic help as well, allowing me to walk around the ballroom and do a little reporting. My first years working with Steve, I was more of a roving reporter who'd come in, and then the last couple of years we've had so many guests drop by that I'm kind of glued to that area. And it is a great opportunity to just get out and hear the stories. And to your point, it's not easy. And I'd say the first year, there was probably a little bit of drag, to be fair. But as the concept has taken off, and as we get more and more feedback and information from the people listening in real time and those on Twitter, I think you could you'd have to be a pretty big contest geek to listen through to the whole thing, but I almost think you could. And I know there are players who do that, players competing in the event. Joe Corey comes to mind as a guy who's not just a great contest player, but also really an aficionado and historian. He tells me he goes back and listens to the whole thing through and in like podcast form and enjoys it. So you'd have to be a little crazy. Probably the sharper move is to see if we can get Steve to post some of the best ofs that he and Casey have been doing. But it's been a great experience, and I love it out there, and I'm hoping to continue to go and work with Steve in the coming years as well.
Yeah, as you were talking, we were showing some of our B-roll of the ballroom, and we had some shots of you and Steve as well with a couple of guests there. And you could see as we watched the B-roll just the enthusiasm in the room. And I'll tell people, you got a sense of how large that ballroom is and how many people are there. There's 650-some players, 670-some players were there. And it was not just that ballroom. There was an auxiliary ballroom. And I said it, and being there, you get even more of a sense of it. So now you having been there a few years, you can convey this as well. I always say this, and talking to the players, they'll say it as well. Sitting at the table, they meet new people, make new friends, and obviously it's very competitive with $800,000 up there as the top prize. But there's just a lot of like-mindedness and camaraderie in the room as well. It makes it a lot of fun.
That's exactly right. I think one of the key things they ever did in terms of marketing the NHC was make it so that you could not buy in. You have to win your way in. And as a result, your very participation in the event is a prize in and of itself. And there are many players for whom I think that obviously everybody wants to win, but there are many people who are just content, I got my trip to Vegas. And as a result, when you're there, it's not, yes, there's fierce competition, but also on some level, everybody feels like a winner. Now, overlay the idea that this is the only true horse players convention, really, and you've really got something special. And I don't mean to diss EquestriCon at all with that. EquestriCon's certainly horse player friendly, but it's more of an industry thing. This event, when you're there, the energy in the room, it's all about the players. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to go there, and unless you're like the world's most painful introvert, you're going to come away with, 2 to 17 new friends. It happens every year. I love it out there, and again, I plan on going back as often as I possibly can.
And, again, having been out there, having listened to the radio broadcast and gotten the enthusiasm through the radio, and hopefully we conveyed some of that with our coverage out there as well. Jim Mulvihill, a couple of days after the event, tweeted out, why isn't there more coverage? And I must say, particularly given what happened at the final table this year, where things kind of, it seemed like every race folks would leapfrog and whatnot. It was very exciting. I'm kind of shocked that, particularly maybe with Fox giving as much coverage now as they do to the sport, that somehow at least that final table couldn't be drilled down to 30 or 60 minutes that could get broadcast. Because certainly, again, you look at the ballroom there and the number of people and the enthusiasm and just the competitiveness of the event, it seems like it should get a wider berth viewer-wise than it does.
It's an interesting and complicated question that I won't wander too far out into the weeds on. Certainly the way that the final table developed this year, I think it's safe to say that this was the greatest NHC of all time, and I don't think it was close. When you look at all the amazing storylines at that final table, between the new blood competing who ended up doing so well, to have a respected player like Marshall Graham coming off a top 10 finish at the Breeders' Cup betting challenge, to have his hat in the ring there at the end, to have Chris Littlemore, last year's champion, do the unthinkable and almost be a 2-time in a row NHC winner. Jim Meeks, the Horse Player World Series winner from years past, there. He had a heart attack on Super Bowl Sunday and still made it out there and made a deep run to finish second. It was story after story. It could have made an amazing TV show. The other years of the final table wouldn't have made a very good TV show. You're always going to be, in my opinion, in that format at the mercy of exactly how it develops. And it's not made for TV the way a poker tournament is, or selfish self-promotion, the way I believe the format of our World Horse Players Tour TV show is made, so that even if you get a suboptimal result, you can still have an entertaining hour of television. I think if the NHC were serious about making a TV play, they'd have to look into tweaking the final table format. And I think their attitude, and I'm not saying they're wrong, I think they're taking more of a if it ain't broke, don't fix it attitude. We're happy with what it is. We're happy with the way that it's gone. And they've done some amazing things, so you can't really blame them. But I do think there's another seismic leap forward to be taken in terms of contests and television, and I'd like to think we're going to eventually be part of it with the World Horse Players Tour.
Yeah, and just remind people, we talked about it with you at Saratoga this past summer. You put together a pilot, and that can still be seen over on YouTube?
Absolutely. If you search for World Horse Players Tour on YouTube, you can find that pilot. I'm trying to think if there's an easier way. That's probably the easiest thing. I'll go ahead and retweet it on my Twitter in a minute, and folks can also find it just if you go to @LoomsBoldly and go to my timeline. That idea is very much alive and well, the idea of an interconnected series of events, very much modeled after the World Poker Tour, with a TV element and very player-friendly terms. I wish I could give more specifics. All I can really say at the moment is there are ongoing conversations with industry, very important people in the industry, about exactly how and when these events are going to unfold. But stay tuned, probably following me on Twitter, the quickest way to get information. Expecting some new, and you know how this goes sometimes in horse racing, a couple of months can turn into 6 months, but hopefully going to be having some information to share within the next couple of months about the World Horse Players Tour. I think there's tremendous potential in handicapping tournaments for television with the tweaks that we put into place for the World Horse Players Tour.
Yeah, seeing what poker has done with that venue, television, and tournaments on television, it just seems like a natural that horse racing could play into that as well and keep us in the loop, because we'd certainly like to promote something like that, because I think overall it would help promote the sport. Let's get back to the NHC and Scott Cole's the winner, because I saw that you had him on your podcast recently talking about the win. We had him on right after the event talking as well a little bit. And Matt Valvolgi as well, the local third place finisher. And it was interesting to talk not just to those two, but to folks during the 3 days and kind of pick their brains as, you know, the better handicappers in the country. What tools do you use? Some of them make their own figures. Some of them have their own algorithms. And it was interesting to find out how they proceeded to the tournament and then through the 3 days of the tournament. What did Scott Coles have to say about his winning effort?
He is able to, as I think a lot of people, you know, younger than me, though I try myself, not always with the most success, to look at a lot of different pieces of information at once and synthesize them into a bigger picture. Two, I do believe he does look at the DRF. I know Scott Coles is very interested in Timeform US, and he also gave a very big plug to StatsLens, and specifically the angle finder aspect of StatsLens and the way that helped him find plays and navigate trying to find optional plays at 8 different racetracks at once, like the NHC format demands. So I think he's somebody who's taking a lot of different information and synthesizing it for the handicapping piece. But I think what he really did that was super smart was to make a conscious effort to incorporate game theory at every step of the process. He understands that in contest play, that points that you get that other people don't get are worth more. And therefore, he spent a lot of time looking at races with short fields that he knew many players in the field, many of the best players in the field, aren't even going to be looking at. And it's not like the best players are wrong. There's an argument that you shouldn't spend a lot of time looking at a 6 or 7 horse race because half your money in the NHC format is bet to place, and you're not going to get any place price almost ever in a short field. So even someone as sharp as Dave Gutfreund, the Tour winner, doesn't even look at those races. Scott spent plenty of time and had multiple instances where he was one of only a handful of players out of the 600 to get points in those type of races. Game theory once again came into play at the final table in terms of when he made his move and how aggressive he needed to be early, especially knowing that the last race at that final table was a 4-horse off-the-turf event at Santa Anita where no ground, well, it was unlikely that ground was going to be able to be made up. He confessed that had he been in a better position early in the final table, he might not have made some of the aggressive plays he made that eventually got him to the top. It's all part of the complexity of horse racing contests, and it very much reminds me of the same type of strategy and decision-making that one needs to have success in poker tournaments, and that I think could have a very wide base of appeal to a large number of those young analytical minds like Scott and Matt and Marshall and so many that we saw in the ballroom at the NHC, but also so many people who are out there betting sports and playing poker. I think when we can get in front of them and say, look what we have to offer, the chance for growth is very, very high.
And I'll toss out, and I'm sure you'll agree, I've said this any number of times, excuse me, I just unfortunately don't have enough time to play as many contests as I would like. I only can maybe get 3 or 4 a year. I'd love to get a shot to go out to Vegas, but I think I have to play more contests. But my point is, I love the contest. I wish I had more time. And they're not just fun. I think they're great for your handicapping because they come into a contest. I think you have to think a little more differently and search for some value. And as you said, some of that game theory and how do I go in the middle of the contest? I'm here. What do I have to do? So I think it's not just fun, but if you jump into these contests, which now the low roller at Saratoga, I love. Folks up here can try that out this coming summer. But now with the number of contests online, folks can certainly jump in and try that as well. But as I say, I think it improves your handicapping.
Yeah, shout out to another Capital Region listener. She's probably listening right now, Karen Carey.
Yeah. Credited
those low roller contests with starting the amazing run she made last year, winning the Gotham tournament, winning the big Belmont contest, and having a big show on the NHC Tour throughout the year. The best line on this topic, and please, anybody listening, do not tell Kinchin I've spent this much time talking about him and or said all these nice things about him, but Kinchin has the best line, and he talks about how in his early cash play, he was sort of afraid to / lack confidence in his ability to lean on longer-priced horses. And playing in mythical $2 win place online or mythical contests like the NHC, they sort of make it so easy to play long shots. And by playing more long shots and therefore connecting with more long shots along the way, you start to develop what he calls a muscle memory, a feel for what they look like, the sorts of races where they hit. And then that, as a multi-race player, that's going to make you so much of a better handicapper when you can know those races where you can take that aggressive stand against the favorite and or really try to get stuck into a horse that's 6 or 18 or 25 or to 1, as one that he gave out on the Fox show 2 weeks ago. He gave out a 20-1 winner. So it's pretty impressive stuff, and I do think contests they're not for everybody. Some people find them a little distracting. If you're happy in your cash play, I'd still say try them, but don't go crazy. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I will also say this: there's so many different contest formats that probably there is one out there for you. It may be Mythical Online. It may be big money live bankroll cash tournaments. And that's one thing we love to talk about on the show. We love to give guidance to people. If you reach out to me on Twitter @LoomsBoldly or just attach the hashtag AskITM, tell me a little bit about your play. what kind of horses you typically find, what bankroll level you're comfortable with spending in a day. I'm happy to offer a little one-on-one consulting to any listeners of this show to help put you on a path to incorporate contests into your game. I think they will help the vast majority of players.
And as we're talking, your graphic is up there with your Twitter handle, so folks can visit @LoomsBoldly on Twitter. Pete, before I let you go, going down your Twitter feed, I see clearly you're a movie fan, and as a film school graduate myself, two of my favorite topics, movies and horse racing, and I will recommend an article on DRF.com, Jay Hovde, with the Academy Awards coming up. Talked to a bunch of racing personalities and got some of their favorite horse racing movies.
Cool.
On the list are obvious choices like Seabiscuit and A Day at the Races, and I'll toss out there, probably would rank up there as my favorite. It's over the last 5 years or so, I've seen it a couple of times, and I'm going to go with Boots Malone and William Holden. I think it's a good look at the industry, warts and all kind of a thing that, as I say, probably gets to the top of my list. But if you have one or two favorite horse racing movies, what would top your list?
When we're talking about gambling movies, the first one that comes to mind, and they did shoot some stuff at Santa Anita, California Split, the Robert Altman movie, that just, for whatever reason, popped directly into my brain as one that I think people who really appreciate gambling should check out. But there's so many from down the years. There's really a lot of places to go. Let It Ride, another that I think I'll keep it on brand and go with that, just because I think there's so much to be said about horse players in that movie as well. I've often dreamed, I don't know if I'll ever do it, but I want to do some sort of film festival. And maybe, Seth, you're the person who can help me get this done finally. Some sort of film festival in Saratoga where we screen some of these classics, because I'll admit, now I know about the movie Boots Malone, and I've heard amazing things. I've actually never seen it, and I bet there are people out there listening who are like me or haven't seen Let It Ride or haven't seen California Split, and I don't know that we couldn't do find a fun partner up there in Saratoga and do something pretty cool during the meet when there's so many like-minded people around.
That's a great idea. They used to do films at the Little Theater out in the park, and with 2 days off coming up this summer, Monday or Tuesday night film festival throughout the
Actually, might be perfect.
Might be a great idea.
Yeah, so, fire up the grill.
There we go. Very good. Pete, as always, appreciate the visit. Peter Thomas Pornatale, once again, just remind people where they can find the podcast.
Easiest way, inthemoneypodcast.com. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on SoundCloud. If you go to any of those places and search for In the Money Players Podcast, you'll find us. If you get lost at all, shoot me a note through the blog or on Twitter @LoomsBoldly, and I will get you sorted out.
I like it. Peter Thomas Pornatale, inthemoneypodcast.com. Appreciate the visit. We'll talk again.
Always a pleasure. Anytime, my friend.
All right, we'll head to a break. When we come back, Brien Bouyea from the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. Again, the nominations for potential Hall of Fame candidates came out about a week and a half or so ago. We'll talk about that and upcoming events at the National Museum of Racing. That's all coming up right after this. Stay tuned.
It may be cold in the Northeast, but in South Florida, the action's hot. This winter, be part of the championship meet at Gulfstream Park, where the fields are deep and the payouts are big. With some of the most competitive turf racing in America, Gulfstream Park is your winter destination for the finest in championship thoroughbred horse racing. And if you're looking for the top jockeys and best trainers, you'll find them all at Gulfstream Park. So play it today. Gulfstream Park. Champions start here.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. You'll get live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform, and best of all, you get track prices. CapitalOTBBet.com. Bet any place, anytime at CapitalOTBBet.com. And be sure to download our new mobile app from the iTunes Store or Google Play.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. Just wrapped up with Peter Thomas Pornatale. Again, check out the In the Money podcast. Now we move on. Coming up in August, Hall of Fame inductions, and that means it's that time of year for the nominations to be scoured over by voters and looked at. The names came out, about a week and a half or so ago, so I thought we'd reach out to Brien, the communications director up at the National Museum of Racing, to talk about the Hall of Fame and the nominations and more at the museum. Brien, good morning.
Good morning, Seth.
Take us through a little bit, as I say, week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the nominations came out. Just to kind of take us through the process that gets the nominations out there. What are the names? How are the names selected? And then take us through the voting process to how those names will be whittled down to the eventual inductees.
Sure. So each year, anybody can nominate, a horse or a jockey or a trainer for the Hall of Fame. And we usually get around 90 to 100 nominations. And the eligibility process is as follows. The horses have to be retired for 5 years. They have to have had made at least one start in North America. Trainers, they can still be active, but they have to be licensed for 25 years. And jockeys, it's the same thing, except it's a 20-year period for them. So if they've been active for 20 years as a jockey or 25 as a trainer, they become eligible. And all those names, we put biographies together for our nominating committee to review, and they whittle it down to the ones that they feel are worthy of being put before the voting panel. So 2/3 of our nominating committee has to approve of a candidate to get to the voting panel. And this year we had 9 candidates, and a really, really good slate. I mean, it's going to be tough for the voters. They can pick as many or as few as they want, but it's a really good group. 5 horses, Blind Luck, Havre de Grace, Geopani, who were all on the ballot last year, and 2 newcomers, Royal Delta, who's in her first year of eligibility, and Rags to Riches, obviously the big-time filly who won the Belmont first in over 100 years. And then we've got 3 trainers. We got Mark Cassey, Christophe Clement, who's on for the first time, and David Whiteley, and we've got the jockey Craig Perret. So those are the finalists for this year.
And there was a rule change, what was it, just last year, that did away with the cap of the number of inductees. Talk a little bit about the rule change.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the previous standard had, you had to get over a certain threshold on the voting. You had to get the majority of the voters to vote for you, but it would cap it as a maximum of 4. And we kind of thought that was unfair, that if there was, certain years where the pool of candidates was very outstanding and the voting panel said, hey, we want to elect 7 or 8 of them. We think they're all worthy. We didn't feel, candidates should be penalized and kind of have to wait. If the voters feel that, hey, they're good enough, we want to vote them in, we're going to not put any sort of restrictions like that on the voting panel.
And let's again just kind of go down the list and take a look here, because, boy, this really is an impressive list. Blind Luck, a Grade 1 winner at age 2, 3, and 4. So certainly plenty of value there. Geopani, a winner of $6 million, champion older male in 2009. Havre de Grace, as a female horse, certainly being elected Horse of the Year and champion older mare in 2011. Completely notable. Rags to Riches, as you say, with the historic win in the Belmont, and Royal Delta won the 3-year-old filly Eclipse in 2011, then the older mare in 2012, 2013. The 5 horses are just exceptional.
Yeah, and I mean, they're all kind of, they've all got sort of different strengths that, you can look at as they go into the Hall of Fame. I mean, Blind Luck, like you said, Grade 1 wins over 3 years. Geopani, very consistent excellence, won 10 graded stakes, 7 grade 1s, obviously a turf monster, but almost won the Breeders' Cup Classic, Havre de Grace, those battles she had with Blind Luck and being a Horse of the Year. Rags to Riches, I mean, I think the only real people that, the knock on her is that, the career was a little bit brief, but the wins are historic. To be the first filly to get the Belmont in over 100 years, and the Kentucky Oaks was an impressive victory, and she was a champion. And then Royal Delta, 3 Eclipse Awards, consistent excellence. So it's a great group of horses, and it's going to be tough if the voters don't think that they want to put them all in. They're going to have to pick and choose from a great group here.
And, of course, there are Saratoga connections with these horses, but for me, maybe the most notable is Havre de Grace winning the Woodward, defeating males up here at Saratoga.
Yeah, I mean, some of these accomplishments, when you look at them, they're just historic and things that, are kind of out of the ordinary. I mean, you look at her resume, and she wound up beating Royal Delta as well. Going on in the Bell Game and everything, and just a tremendous career with her.
The three trainers, Mark Casse, of course, in the Hall of Fame up in Canada, trying to get in the Hall of Fame down here south of that border. But he's trained 4 Eclipse winners, among them World Approval and Teppan. He's won over $157 million. So Mark Casse, certainly a notable name. Christophe Clement, obviously very familiar to us, longtime NYRA circuit fans, and Christophe Clement, 12th on the all-time list with $127 million, trained the 2014 Belmont Stakes winner tonalist. And David Whiteley, maybe a little less familiar to newer fans, but certainly fans of my age range remember David Whiteley, and trained Eclipse Award winners like Bouyea and Rivedier, won the Belmont Stakes in 1979 with Coastal. Why is that notable? Not only is it a Belmont win, but it kept Spectacular Bid, the great Spectacular Bid, from a Triple Crown. So again, the three trainers also very, very notable with their careers.
Yeah, and I think when you look at some of the numbers with them, when you dive in, Christophe Clement, the stat that really stood out to me is this guy's got 237 graded stakes wins during his career so far. And that number really jumped out to me. I mean, that's more than a guy like Steve Asmussen has, It's absolutely an incredible number. And then David Whiteley, the number that jumps out to me is, he had a small stable, and it was, quality over quantity. Winning 32.7% of his lifetime starts is just, that's a number that would raise a lot of suspicion today. You know what I mean? It's the guy just had phenomenal success and was just an amazing horseman. And Mark Casse, the guy is absolutely in the prime of his career, and a lot of his Breeders' Cup wins and everything has been within the last few years, and had some great champions. So. Great group of trainers as well, absolutely.
That is notable. Whiteley, 32.7% for his career. Crazy number there. And Craig Perret, again, a guy like me remembers Craig at the kind of the height of his career when he was riding regularly. Towards the end of the career, he became it was interesting, an appointment jockey. He would kind of pick his spots and had a nice end to the career. But I didn't realize it. It won over $113 million. I didn't really realize it until I saw it on the press release in print. His career went from 1967 to 2005. That's almost 40 years in the saddle. And as I say, he kind of, I would say, was one of the first of those appointment-type jockeys as he got to the end of the career and would really pick his spots. But again, an almost 40-year career, 4 Breeders' Cup races, won the Derby on Unbridled, a nice jockey career for Craig Perret.
Yeah, and I think what's notable is, he won an Eclipse Award in 1990. He probably would have had an apprentice award if they had one when he started. I mean, he was the leading apprentice by earning the 1967, before they had Eclipse Awards. So if he had his career kind of in a little bit later decade, he would have had, 2 Eclipse Awards, in my opinion. And you're right about, kind of the picking and choosing toward the end of his career, just kind of going out there. I mean, we see it now with, the likes of Mike Smith. Gary Stevens was doing that the last few years before he retired. So, his prime big-time years were a little bit further back, but, he was still a competent rider toward the end. And, you look at, winning 4 Breeders' Cup races, 208 graded stakes, and, rode some really, really good horses. So, he's been on the ballot a few times now, but he's certainly worthy of strong consideration.
And again, nuts and bolts, ballots will go out on March 1st, and we will know towards the end of April who is going in this year?
That is correct. The ballots will be mailed out March the 1st, and the announcement on who gets in will be making it on April 22nd. And we'll be making that announcement at the same time as we announce the Historic Review inductees and the Pillars of the Turf as well.
Very good. Looking forward to that. Let's hit also on, because this was a nice addition to the Hall a few years ago, the Joe Hirsch Media Roll of Honor. And this year, certainly there's a name every racing fan is familiar with, Tom Hammond. But there's also the late Eclipse Award-winning cinematographer Joe Burnham, and just reading kind of his bio. As a film guy myself, I was very interested in what he did and some of the pioneering work Burnham did. But they get added to, again, as I say, the Joe Hirsch Media Roll of Honor was a great addition, and some of the names that are already in: Steve Christ, Bill Knack, our buddy Mike Veach, Jenny Reese, Jack Whitaker, Steve Haskin. So as I say, Tom Hammond, familiar with people, maybe Joe Burnham, a little less familiar, but both, again, important as media members covering the sport of horse racing.
Yeah, I think it was, kind of a great thing we did a couple of years ago is that, we started this off as an award for print journalists. And we kind of said, looking at the media today in the landscape, that, there really isn't just print journalism. The sport is covered in so many different ways, from cinematographers to photographers to radio guys, TV guys. And, I think that diversity showed up this year, that put in Tom Hammond, who's, just done such amazing television work for this sport, and just, is such an amazing guy and has done this for such a long time. And Joe Burnham, people, it's kind of one of those things where, you might not recognize who he is until you get to be told about the work, but you've seen the work, you've seen the visuals that he's put together, and, the innovative ways that he shot racing, and, just kept such a great library for the sport as well. So he made invaluable contributions, and the Joe Hirsch Award's been a big hit here.
And again, just kind of realizing something when I read the press release. It's funny, Tom Hammond, who, again, it was only a couple of years ago, he kind of retired from the horse racing coverage on the network. But, boy, he had been there for a long time and did an absolutely fabulous job. But according to the press release, it was supposed to be a one-time thing, the inaugural Breeders' Cup. They had Hammond come in, and from that, he was there for decades.
Yeah, it's amazing how careers go in ways that you never expect. This is a guy that, probably just showed up for this and thought, hey, we'll see how it goes and everything, and then it just became, an amazing career, and all the other stuff he did. The Winter Olympics and covering Notre Dame football and everything else. This is the guy who's traveled the world and but obviously done all the figure skating and college basketball and even NFL games. So it's a diverse, amazing career that Tom has had.
Brien, let's shift attention a little bit, because I said towards the top of the show, also wanted to have you on because here we are, middle towards the end of winter, but there's still some cold weather out there and whatnot. So what better time to make a visit to the National Museum of Racing? If you've been, you know how much fun it is. Get up there. If you haven't been, this is a great time to swing by and make a visit out there on Union Avenue, right across the street from the racetrack. And I want to bring up, I'm going to swing by and see this because since it's been announced, I've been interested. It opened towards the middle of January, but the photo finish exhibit, you put out the call for entries this past summer, had a lot of folks jump in, and then there was a juried look at the photos, and now you've put together a nice exhibit of photos taking a look at the sport of horse racing. Talk a little bit about the photo finish exhibit and how long it'll be at the museum.
Yeah, this was something we were really excited about, and the reaction to it's been terrific. We put out a call to entries, and this could be professional photographers, amateurs. We didn't put any restrictions on it. We just put a call out, and we had, I think it was like people from 23 different states. We had people from Canada, international, sending us stuff, and it's a variety of amazing things that were sent in. From racing action to paddock scenes to portraits of jockeys and trainers and horses, retired horses. Everything you can think of is probably covered in this exhibit, and a good portion of it, was selected for the official exhibit that's in our Von Stadi gallery. But there's so much more that we also post on our website, racingmuseum.org. So if you want to look at the website to get an idea of what's in the exhibit, I definitely recommend doing that. But to come in to see these visuals in the room, there's some amazing talent out there. I think racing is the sport that lends itself more to great visuals for photographers than any other, and I'm amazed by what's out here in this exhibit.
Yeah, as I say, I'm going to head over and take a look at the exhibit because I always find racing photographs intriguing to begin with, and I'll be interested to see what this group of people did with this sport. Remind us once again, wintertime hours at the museum.
Sure, we're open 10 to 4 on Wednesday through Sunday. We're closed Mondays and Tuesdays, but we're open 10 to 4 the rest of the week.
Sounds good. And before we let you go, also want to remind people again, this kicked off last year and I think was very, very successful. We were at your press party that kicked it off. The Foal Patrol, which allows folks to kind of get a birth to racetrack look at some of these horses because there are cameras in the stalls as some horses are giving birth, and we are right in the midst of foaling season right now. So if folks visit the Foal Patrol website, they can jump on and maybe catch a future star being born. But again, fill people in who maybe aren't familiar, Foal Patrol Season 2. Yeah,
we've got 9 horses on it this year. 2 of them have already foaled with honors at Claiborne Farm. Had her foal on February 4th. And the second one came right here in Saratoga last night. Come Chez Soi who's at Old Tavern Farm, which is over by Saratoga Lake, had her foal at about 1 a.m. last night. And we've got 7 more. Love and Pride, who's at Three Chimneys Farm, is probably the next one who's on the list. She's a couple of days overdue, so we're waiting for her. But one of the things we did, that was a little bit different this year is we included Frosted at Darley this year, and we want to give people a little information about life with the stallion. What their careers are like on the farm. And Frosted, as you know, had such a huge following. I mean, it's just amazing. We've gotten a lot of great feedback for having him in there. And this year we added a lot of educational content, from having vets come in and talk about the foaling process and the breeding, and a lot of different terminology and everything. So it's fun to look at, but it's also you're going to learn something. But I think the best part of it is it gives you access to see things that the people who go to the racetrack regularly wouldn't get an opportunity to see. So it's a lot of fun, and it's like having these horses, right in your living room.
As I say, I thought it was a fun idea when it was announced last year, and I think it was successful, and so happy to see it back for season 2. As you mentioned, website racingmuseum.org. People can check there to keep up with the news and events at the museum. We look forward to the announcement of the 2019 nominees towards the end of April for the Hall of Fame. Brien, as always, appreciate the visit, and we'll talk again.
Thanks for having me, Seth. Have a good day.
Brien Bouyea from the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. Again, the nominations are out, and as you heard, a very impressive list. We'll know towards the end of April who's inducted this year. And don't forget, nice season. Get rid of the cabin fever a little bit and stop up to the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. Again, right across Union Avenue from the racetrack. If you haven't been, it is worth the visit. If you've been, stop again. Check out the photo finish exhibit. I'm going to swing over, as they say. That intrigues me. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, mentioned it at the top of the show, you don't always see intriguing races on a Friday in February, but there were a couple. There was one at Tampa yesterday, and Stormy Liberal out at Santa Anita in their opener, and what is potentially a prep for Dubai. So we'll take a look at a couple of races and more when we come back. Stay tuned.
The road to the Kentucky Derby ends with the most exciting 2 minutes in racing, but getting there begins long before then. With 34 prep races that span 15 tracks, the best place to watch, wager, and win is Capital OTB and OTB TV. Upcoming Derby prep races include the Gotham from Aqueduct, the Tampa Bay Derby, and the San Felipe from Santa Anita. So for in-depth coverage and expert analysis of all the Derby prep races, stay with Capital OTB and OTB TV.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices, to know how to connect the dots? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool, but not the only tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. These too are important tools, and you'll find them all right here at Capital OTB. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Not at the track and not near a computer? No problem. Wager with Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System and you'll never get shut out again. Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System is quick, simple to use, and guarantees your wagers are accurate and placed on time. For more information, visit CapitalOTB.com or call Capital OTB's customer service hotline at 800-292-BETS. Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System. Never get shut out again.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. As promised, a couple of races from yesterday. I was in doing OTB Live and watched this one and knew immediately wanted to show it. The second race at Tampa yesterday, 3-year-olds and an optional claimer. Now, it was notable because Spinoff is in here. Spinoff will be the number 2 horse when we watch the replay. Todd Pletcher, trainee that debuted last June at Gulfstream and won the career debut, and then they came up to Saratoga and tried the Saratoga Special, ran 3rd in there. Pletcher said the horse had a little setback after that, so hadn't been seen since running third in the Saratoga Special. Yesterday went off as the 3-5 favorite at Tampa in this optional claimer, a field of 5 after a scratch. Cave Run is also in here, the one horse. It's Owen Hardy and Godolphin. Pretty good-looking debut winner at Tampa in December, and then ran third in the Pasco last time. So there's a little bit of talent potentially from Cave Run and Mercutio, the number 5 horse. 2 starts back, ran second in the inaugural at Tampa, followed up with a dud in a stake at Gulfstream, but on the return to Tampa, Mercutio looked to have the potential to rebound a little bit. And as we'll see, Mercutio's the number 5 horse and goes out and kind of puts Spinoff, the number 2, in a little bit of a jackpot down the stretch. Mercutio is kind of, you can tell John Velasquez doesn't want to be where he is, and he kind of tries to outrun Mercutio, can't, and then hits the brakes and comes back, lets that one go by and pulls out. A smart move. But then you wonder, gee, was that maneuvering going to take too much out of the horse? Well, they turn into the stretch, and Spinoff looks pretty good. After the race, and you can watch for this, John Velasquez, and that was notable too. It's a Friday afternoon, and John Velasquez is at Tampa for race 2 on a Friday afternoon. So that he shipped across the state to ride this horse was notable. But Velasquez, after the race, said Spinoff passed the other horses and got to the quarter-mile pole, and then he started waiting. Then he saw the gate at the top of the stretch, which they'd moved along the outside rail, and he went to pull up, and Velasquez said, whoa, come on, pay attention. But once he passed the gate and the other horse, Cave Run, comes to him, he went on again, and it was a good effort, and it was a good effort. So right here, we'll take a look again yesterday, race number 2. This is start number 3 for the Pletcher trainee Spinoff, and I should note, this is the 3rd year in a row that Pletcher has sent kind of an untested 3-year-old over to try a 1.40 race at Tampa. A couple of years ago, Always Dreaming came over to win a maiden race on January 25th, subsequently wins the Kentucky Derby. And last year, he sent Magnum Moon over for an allowance optional claimer on February 15th. That one goes on to win the Rebel and the Arkansas Derby. So this path for a Pletcher 3-year-old is a little bit interesting. Again, to give you the numbers, Spinoff will be the number 2 horse, Cave Run the number 1 horse, and Mercutio will be the number 5 horse. Yesterday's second race from Tampa.
Hardaway, the last to move in line. On the board at 13-1. They're at the post. And they're off. Mercutio from the outside is away alertly and reaching up for the early lead. Spinoff comes away in good order from between horses. Cave Run with the rail advantage slips through not a challenge. They make it 3 across the track, vying for the early lead, and the last horse away is Hardaway. Around the clubhouse turn they go. Mercutio and Sammy Camacho going on with it and have the lead now by a length. Odds-on favorite Spinoff takes back off the pace, settles into stride second. Then it's 4 lengths farther back to Cave Run third. Then it's a break of 3. Summer Duck is fourth, and the trailer is Hardaway. They continue their run up the backstretch. Mercutio on the outside, a short lead, and Spinoff is there toward the rail. Then it's a big break of 5 to Cave Run third. 5 lengths farther back to Summer Duck fourth, and Hardaway the trailer. To the far turn they go. It's Mercutio with the lead, and now Johnny Vasquez has taken Spinoff, angled him to the outside, and he's taken dead aim on the leader. 5 lengths farther back, Cave Run, under an all-out right third. Then it's a break of 8. Summer Duck is now fourth as they approach the quarter-mile pole. Spinoff being confidently handled by Velasquez, going to the lead and doing it on his own. Here's Cave Run on the outside. Mercutio is a tiring third. They turn into the stretch. Spinoff. Now Velasquez gets busy. Cave Run on the outside. Mercutio is toward the rail. Inside the final furlong off the long layoff. He's impressive today. Spinoff. He's in front and striding clear, prepping for something down the line, and he's much the best. Impressively by 8 or 9. Cave Run was second. Summer Duck was third, and check the running time, 1:40.25.
Rich Grunder said prepping for something else, obviously, and again, to go back 2 years ago, Pletcher comes cross-state with Always Dreaming for a Tampa win. Last year, Magnum Moon. So they both went on to nice Grade 1 wins. Kentucky Derby for Always Dreaming, the Grade 1 Arkansas Derby for Magnum. We'll see what Spinoff can do. As you saw, top of the stretch, it looked like K-Run might make it interesting. Would that maneuvering on the backstretch have taken something out of Spinoff? No is the answer. Spinoff, chart margin of just under 12 lengths there. So Spinoff, nice winner, good-looking 3-year-old potentially for Todd Pletcher going forward. That was race 2 at Tampa. Again, you don't see normally the early double on Fridays at various tracks producing the kind of results and performers and performances we saw yesterday. The opener at Santa Anita kick off their early double. Stormy Liberal, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, was in there. Second start of the year, won the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, came back on January 1st and ran second in a stake here at Santa Anita. And then followed up in this allowance race yesterday that kicked off the Santa Anita card. Stormy Liberal is going to be the number 3 horse, prepping potentially for a start on the turf sprinting in Dubai. We'll see what they do now coming out of this, because you're going to take a look. It was a field of 5. Stormy Liberal will be the number 3 horse with Drayden Van Dyke riding. And as we watch the replay, just as they kind of come around halfway of the turn, they've got the split screen with the close-up and the wide shot, and they go to the one shot as they get close to the stretch. And just about the time they go to the one shot, keep your eyes on Stormy Liberal. You can see takes a bad step. Drayden Van Dyke, the jockey, said he hit a bad spot and almost lost his whole balance. It definitely cost me the race. He came back all right. That's the main thing. Subsequently, excuse me, the trainer Peter Miller has said, we'll see how he is. Hopefully we can go on with him. So I think the Dubai trip is maybe a little bit of a question mark. You might get a little follow-up on that today if you check Racing Form or whatnot, see if Peter Miller has now made a decision. But it's also notable that Drayden Van Dyke lost his whip in the final 16th. It's hard to see, but it is a ding-dong battle subsequently as Stormy Liberal, number 3, is engaged late by Eddie Haskell. And in the stretch, Eddie Haskell says, "Hello, Mrs. Cleaver," and makes a race of it. As I say, it's hard to see Drayden Van Dyke lose the whip, but that was what was reported. But again, about the time that the picture goes from split screen to one shot, just at the end of the turn, you'll see Stormy Liberal, the number 3 horse, take kind of a funny step and lose some momentum. So the 2018 Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner, Stormy Liberal, in yesterday's opener at Santa Anita.
Starters, get him in. All set for the opener. And they're off, and Calculator comes out running. So does Stormy Liberal, who now takes the lead. Eddie Haskell is in between those two. Sistron is next. Tough Sunday off a step slowly in his return. It's Calculator who will show the way over stablemate Stormy Liberal, who's a length and a half back, passed at the rail now by Sistron. Then Eddie Haskell fourth, 2.5 lengths off Calculator. Tough Sunday inches up outside of him. Easy lead for Calculator around the far turn as Stormy Liberal now takes aim within 3/4, now within a half length coming to the quarter pole. Just in behind them, Eddie Haskell is third. Tough Sunday on the outside of Sistron. Stormy Liberal on even terms with Calculator. Eddie Haskell a threat on the outside in third as Stormy Liberal takes the lead. Eddie Haskell is going to test him hard, and Calculator is down on the inside. Eddie Haskell, Stormy Liberal, nose and nose to the wire. Stormy Liberal or Eddie Haskell. Here's the line. Eddie Haskell and Stormy Liberal in a close photo. Then it was Calculator in a show photo with Sistron.
As I say, hello, Mrs. Cleaver. Eddie Haskell gets it done as the 4-1 second choice. Stormy Liberal went off as the 30-cent to $1 favorite, understandably, if you looked at the numbers and whatnot there. Chart margin ahead for Eddie Haskell. And we'll see. Again, it did bobble a little bit, as you saw, kind of going into the top of the stretch. Stormy Liberal lost a little momentum. And we'll see what they say coming out of this as far as now moving on to that potential Dubai start. But again, a couple of fun races for Friday afternoon at the various venues across the country. I will note also, boy, it's kind of a slim day stakes-wise at the various venues. But Santa Anita today, the Buena Vista, one of the few graded events on the calendar today. Alicia's World moved out of the barn of Chad Brown into the barn of Richard Baltus. That one's interesting. And Vasilika who had the 8-race win streak broken in the Matriarch in December over at Del Mar, but started a new streak last time, the end of January in the Megahertz. So Vasilika, the one to watch there in the Buena Vista, the 8th race at Santa Anita today. Again, one of the few graded stakes races on the calendar this afternoon. And there it is, in fact. Alicia's World, going to be interesting to see what she does in the new barn. But Vasilika, again, having started that brand new streak last time, certainly the one to beat. All right. I'm going to wrap things up for this edition of Racing Across America. Again, happy to have been joined by Brien, Communications Director from the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. I recommend you stop up there or visit the website, racingmuseum.org. Pete Pornatale, happy to talk to him about the new podcast, a little review of the NHC from a couple of weeks ago. But the podcast, In the Money, and you can catch it at inthemoneypodcast.com. Pete's Twitter handle, again, looms boldly as well. You can follow him there. Today, a $100 win-a-bet contest online. Love to have you participate. More information on how to do that at capitalotb.com. Tomorrow should be a lot of fun. The NYRA Pick 4 and Match Bet promotions, both right here at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. We'd love to see you down here. Watch all the racing action and all the sports action as well on the weekends, and every day actually, with our sports TVs at the one side of the room. Love to have you down here, as I say, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. I want to thank our friends at Gulfstream for their sponsorship. Gulfstream Park, champions start here. Also, I was going to wear my orange tie, go orange, against Duke today, but my orange tie was all wrinkled, so like many of my ties are, so I went with blue. But still, hoping for the best for the Orangemen, and hope condolences to the folks involved in that accident with Jim Boeheim a couple of nights, earlier this week. That was just really a tragic incident, and I understand Boeheim will be on the bench today, so that's just a tough situation for everybody involved. But certainly rooting for my Orange to get another win over Duke, which I think would guarantee a spot in the tournament. 2 wins over Duke, certainly nice look on the resume. So we'll see how it works out this afternoon for the Syracuse Orangemen. All right, I'll be back in about an hour and a half with OTB Live for a Saturday afternoon. We'll have the usual contingent of tracks, Aqueduct, Gulfstream, Tampa, a little bit later on, Oaklawn. Should be fun. Looking forward to it. Hopefully give out some good information. So in the meantime, enjoy the next hour or so of some pregame and whatnot. We'll be back in about an hour and a half. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.